You're listening to XVGM Radio. Welcome to XVGM Radio, where the bits keep coming. I'm Justin.
And I'm Mike.
And this is episode 115, same song, different system, Paper Mario, the Thousand-Year Door, with special guest, my wife, Ariel.
Hi.
My wife.
My wife. I am Waifu Schneider.
Oh, Waifu Senpai.
Oh, my God.
So, yeah, tonight we are here to talk about a game that came out somewhat recently. I think we're a little behind the eight ball on this one. Came out earlier this year.
Yes.
Remade earlier this year. Thousand Year Door. We're going to compare the GameCube music to the Switch music. Definitely clearer and more pronounced instruments in the Switch version, but very, very much like a beat for beat. I think it's a few seconds shorter than the GameCube version too, but I mean, without looking at the timestamps, I couldn't tell. The GameCube sounded more synth versus I guess it with the hearing the hit or the attack, you feel like it's either a real instrument or it's a better synth that sounds like a real instrument.
Yeah, the tail end of the track really gets uplifted quite a bit in the Switch version. The GameCube version, I think, stood out a little bit more to me in terms of the beginning. Like that beginning I don't know, the whole thing feels very Final Fantasy to me.
Yes, in fact, there's even a run of notes that to me harkens back to Final Fantasy VII. I can't remember the name of the song, but it's da 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 da. Da. Actually, that might be Final Fantasy VIII. I think that's Balam Garden.
Yeah. Okay.
But other than that, yeah, it definitely has. I mean, it's an RPG, and they did work with Nobuo Uematsu on Super Mario RPG on the SNES. So I'm sure Nintendo took some ideas and learning from that and used it for the other Paper Mario RPGs.
Didn't Yoko Shimomura also do that soundtrack?
Yes, I think they might have primarily done that soundtrack, actually. But
Yeah.
I know Nobuo is credited, actually, he's just credited because they used the Final Fantasy IV battle theme. So.
Okay, then yeah. I think Yoko Shimomura did the main soundtrack.
Yes.
And that also got a remake or re-release on the Switch too. So the Switch is eating good when it comes to Mario RPG games.
My wallet is not, though.
No,
Yeah.
and there's a new one coming out too. There's another one I think coming out.
No, Origami.
No. There's another one coming
The
out.
Peach one?
No. There's another one coming out.
I don't know, because the Paper Mario games all declined after Thousand Year Door because they started introducing more cheesy gimmicks and less of the quality elements that made it just a good RPG.
Yeah. As far as these tracks go, we've picked 2 songs each outside of the intro, which was, by the way, called An Awfully Long Time Ago. And the GameCube version of the soundtrack was composed by Yoshihito Hirano and Yuka Tsujiyoko. And the Switch version was composed by Kazuki Komai and Fumihiro Isobe. Yeah, we're going to get into their profiles as well. I mean, this came out originally on the GameCube in 2004, and I got it when it came out.
Same.
And loved it. I thought it was great. It was one of the few RPGs over the years that I played through the whole way through. I stuck with it and basically played it. Normally when I play an RPG, I'm I get sidetracked and I'll start an RPG and then be like, oh, I got this other game here that I want to play and this other game.
I have a very tumultuous relationship with the original game, though, because I played the first Paper Mario. Well, no, on the original release of Thousand Year Door, because I was in high school when it came out.
Okay.
And 2004, I would have been a
God,
freshman.
you're so
I know.
young.
I'm a baby. I'm still a baby. But yeah, I would have been a freshman when it came out. So when you beat the main game, there is the Pit of 100 Trials. And the Pit of 100 Trials at the bottom is a bone dragon. Spoiler alert, there's a bone dragon.
Yeah.
And they actually gave Bone Tail its own original theme in the Switch remake, which we can't do because they just had a generic dragon theme for the 3 dragons over the course of the game for the GameCube, and then they made unique themes, and it slaps so hard. But my problem was I could not beat Bone Tail, and I had done the math that I would have had to go back to the start of the pit to get enough experience to then get all the way back through it. And my previous save was at level 78. And I was like, I'm not going through the 100 pit trials again. No. And I just never did it.
Oh. Huh.
And now I've done it as an adult.
Nice. Do you feel accomplished now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you just have to get back to the bottom of the pit a second time, though, because then there's another boss after Bone Tail.
Oh,
I
jeez.
don't remember if I attempted Bone Tail. I might have. And I might have ran into the same problem.
Very difficult.
Yeah, yeah. But I know I beat the game. I did actually beat this one.
Okay. Did you get the remake of Super Mario RPG?
No.
Oh, okay.
Same reason.
Yeah.
Actually, I really didn't like the art in Super Mario RPG.
The remake? Or
the remake, yeah. I loved it in the original. And that was one of the few RPGs, again, that I started and couldn't put it down and just beat it.
Yeah.
And once I beat it, I was like, okay, I'm never going to play this again. Or I'm like, it's great, but I don't foresee myself ever going back to this. RPGs, there's very few RPGs that I can go back to and play over and over and over again. Probably Final Fantasy VII, Chrono Trigger. That's about it,
Yeah, I mean, anything, Chrono Trigger especially, anything that has multiple endings.
True.
That's one of the things that I like about Baldur's Gate 3. Not to get more sidetracked,
Sweats.
there's a million ways to play that game. But either way, staying on the Mario RPG topic, I never actually got into the paper games. I played Super Mario RPG on the SNES,
Same, yeah.
and then I wasn't really big into the GameCube. A lot of my friends had GameCube, so like I played the party games.
Sure.
But I never got into any of the dedicated stuff.
Yeah.
I did grab, was it Super Paper Mario on
The Wii?
And I got through about half of that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I had the original Paper Mario. I never played Paper Mario RPG because that was before my time. But I got Paper Mario, The Thousand Year Door. I think I got Sticker Star, which was on the DS. I think I played the one on the Wii, though I have very minimal memories. I just remember playing like 4 or 5 of them, and by that 4th or 5th game being like, these games suck.
Yeah.
They used to be so good, and now they just...
Yeah,
I don't know. I also really like in the Paper Mario games specifically how you are battling on a stage and it is a show.
Yes.
Very
that was
reminiscent
always
of-
really cool.
Very reminiscent of Super Mario Brothers 3.
Yeah. I gotta say, I really prefer the GameCube version after listening to the 2 versions kind of back to back. I feel like there's just too much going on, and I like the more simplistic kind of vibe that intro brings with that GameCube version.
For someone who generally prefers the GameCube one, I like the first half of the song for the GameCube one, but then I like the second half of the Switch one.
Like where the drums...
Where the snare
comes
picks
in.
up. Yeah.
I kind of feel the same way. Like overall, they're very similar. Definitely not the same at all. But yeah, the opening to the Switch version, I don't know what it is, but like the instruments that they're using, I don't like the sound quality on them as much as I do from the GameCube version. But like you were saying, when the snare picks up, it sounds more full. But to me, it doesn't sound overdone, kind of like what you were saying in general. Like I think it's like a half and half sort of thing.
Yeah. It kind of resonated with me a little bit more. There's some nostalgia to it, but honestly, I can't. I'm not that nostalgic for this game. It's more like it was a good game when it came out, and I haven't thought about it in 20 years.
Oh yeah, I was frothing at the mouth as soon as they announced it.
Well, I remember like maybe 2 years ago, like coming over to do like an After Dark or whatever, like just to come over, and you and I got on the topic of the Thousand Year Door, and you were like, "Oh, I sold my version."
I know. I was gonna say that at some point. Like I traded it in at some point, and it is like one of my deepest regrets until they announced the remake. Anyway, now I'm like, I still do care, but I don't care as much.
Yeah. Would you go and buy the original now that you have the remake?
If it was like rock bottom prices, because it was like $200 to $300.
Yeah, it was expensive.
It was ridiculous, and like there are a handful of games like that. Like I said, I got rid of at I traded to GameStop stupidly because I wanted a DS or a 3DS or some nonsense, and I hadn't played the games in forever, and I still have my memory card, and I still have somewhere. It's just one of those games that like it would have to come down to like $50,
right,
in order to like tempt me.
It is pretty cheap. I know that it significantly dropped in price.
Yeah, because you said that you had a copy that you were
I was
like...
going to sell it and get the new version, but the problem is now with a lot of these remakes of older games is you have to kind of wait until the dust settles to see if the game is truly one, a good version, and two, what the differences are, because there's games, especially Sega has come out with some of these Sonic games, the re-releases, and there's like some major differences that people have highlighted that you're like, I think I'm going to keep my original, so I've kind of stood by that.
There definitely are some differences, but they seem, to me at least, overall minor. Like, they changed around where a couple of the badges were. They changed a couple. I think they like added a couple badges, and then like they like tweaked because of those variances of like where you find them, or adding in new stuff. And then I think they added in new recipe items. So they tweaked like how things function a little bit. Yeah. But overall, it's almost a 1-for-1.
Complete in-box pricing at its highest for this game in just 2020, around like September, August of 2020, was about $130. It has now plummeted to $61.
Okay.
Wow. So
which I don't need complete in box. Let's be real. I'm like, give me the disc. I will print out my own label. I do not care.
Disc only is about $40-something, $30 something.
That's not so bad.
So it is realistic to get the game for a very reasonable price. And I gotta wonder if Nintendo kind of did this intentionally with the idea of plummeting some of these prices.
Listen, do it with Pokemon. That's all I care
Yes.
about. Give me all the games that they're on the Wii U, but you can't get them anymore because the Wii U shop closed, and put them on the Switch on the Virtual Console. I need them.
Now.
Yeah.
I have Pokemon to shiny hunt.
Let's move into Ariel's first pick.
This is Rogueport, which is the main city and hub area, and you spend a lot of time, and this song is drilled into my brain.
Yep, we're going to listen to the GameCube version, and then we'll come back and introduce the Switch version. All right, that was the GameCube version of Rogueport. Now we're going to listen to the Switch version.
Welcome back. Well, you just heard the GameCube version of Rogueport and then the Switch version of Rogueport.
Major differences between these two.
Oh, yes.
The later version, the Switch version, sounded so much more full and rich. And I love... Only thing I can think of to call it is like the snake salesman, that kind of like Arabian kind of vibe.
I was going to say the Middle Eastern vibe.
Well, so I mean, the whole point with Rogueport is that it's literally a rogue's port. It's, a bunch of criminals. There's a whole seedy underbelly. Half the town is above ground, half the town is below ground. And so, they tried to, it sounds to me anyway, like they tried to capture the maritime elements and then after the first part of it, switch to the seedy underbelly parts of it.
Okay. Yeah, I like that part. It's quick. It doesn't stick around too long, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's cool. It's very different from something like with a similar Arabian vibe, like Shantae, for example.
Oh, right, which is kind of consistent.
Pretty much consistently all Arabian. So,
In the GameCube version, some of the instruments sound a bit like toys, like a toy instrument.
I was gonna say I listened to this in high school. Respectable volumes for, do not listen to things too loudly. And then even, on the Switch version, in Rogueport, there's a shop where you can buy badges to get abilities. And one of the badges you could buy for like 5 coins, and it's 0 badge points to equip, gives you all of the GameCube audio.
Oh, cool.
So that's how I played on the Switch, was I got that immediately, and I only listened to the GameCube songs. But even then, I don't listen to music very loudly. It's just not my thing. But listening to it with headphones in was interesting, hearing like the little like twangs and the little clappy bits that I genuinely had not even heard before.
Well, like when you're listening through like TV speakers or like general like mono type speakers, there's a lot of stuff that you lose. I mean, partly because of the type of speakers, but also just because you have the sound being blasted at you, whereas when it's in your ears, when you have headphones or earphones in, there's you get all the nuances of what the composer
it just dissipates over the distance to reach your ears.
It just kind of like blends into like the song TM. The percussion in the GameCube version, I mean, not all of it. Like the drums were drums, but it felt like there was a lot of like woodblock percussion in it too, which I really liked. But in the Switch version, like you said, it felt like bigger, more broader. I was thinking kind of like almost like a bigger band sound. It feels a little bit grown up, but the Middle Eastern parts in the Switch version
sound really rocking,
very rockish, which I thought was great, because like I thought it was good in the GameCube version, but like they brought that like little extra flair to like zhuzh it up in the Switch version by like rocking out a little bit. And then even like the trumpet part in the GameCube version, like the trumpet's there, it's kind of synthesized, but in this part it feels like somebody's playing a trumpet solo, which as a like a band musician in my past, like I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, all the instrumentation is so much better on the Switch version in terms of like instruments sounding like real instruments.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
I will say, given all that though, I'm going to be the probably odd one out where I prefer the GameCube one because it is simplistic. Okay. Because I mean, if you think of like the aesthetics of the game, it's just little paper cutouts and everything's very soft and cutesy. And I mean, personally, I just get very audibly overwhelmed by the Switch version. So that was one of the things that like, when they were like, there's literally a badge you can get to just put it on the GameCube one. I was like, give me that, partly for nostalgia, but also like I did, turn it off every now and then to try to be like, okay, well, what does this sound like in the new one? And every time I'm just like, no. I did like it for like the boss battles, but I think that's my problem is like the Switch one is so much more vibrant that it just makes it sound like a boss battle to me. And I'm like, I'm literally just running to the store to go, buy something or get a lottery ticket or go smash a Goomba in the ground or something. Like, why does it sound like I'm off to go, like, save the world at every single second? Like, because, again, huge parts of the story are just like, I just, like, went to some guy's house and, like, here's your hot dog.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about the plot of this game, just like, if you had to sum it up in like 60 seconds.
It's all right. I'm good at this. I had a friend who used to train me on this.
Nice.
She would always say 10 words or less.
I was going to say, I don't know if you can do this 10 words or less.
No, not 10 words or less, but I can do it
20
short.
minutes later.
The overall plot is Princess Peach, as she does, decides to go wander about one day and makes her way to Rogueport and discovers a treasure map. Come to find out that the treasure map is a map to lead to these like crystal stars that unlock a 1,000-year door, which has been closed for 1,000 years, that a demon is supposedly sealed behind. And so you learn over the course of the game that some sort of previous heroes had sealed away a demon, and then over time, this city got built on top of it, and that's why it's like a rogue port. It's just a place for people to come and go between the different sections of the world. So she very quickly gets kidnapped by these people called the X-Nauts, or the Cross-Nauts, depending on your interpretation of the spelling.
I always thought it was X-Nauts.
I always said X-Nauts, too. I've heard a couple people say Cross-Nauts, and I'm like, what? No, but so...
I blame Sony.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the X-Nauts, they're a bit of a bumbling band of bad guys led by one, big head honcho guy, and they're trying to also collect these stars to unseal the door to harness the power of the demon and take over the world. And so, Mario gets written a letter by, I believe, Peach, and summoning him to the town. She writes him a letter originally being like, oh, I found this treasure map. You should come visit. And then she gets kidnapped. So you have to go investigate and save her. And, you're brought all over the world and make a bunch of new friends. And eventually you deal with the stars and the door and the evil demon.
It wasn't the 1,000-year door that brought us together, but the friends we made along the way.
Yeah.
Jeez. I feel like I remember there being a subplot, although this might have been something...
There are many subplots.
Well, yeah, but with Princess Peach, after being captured, there's that whole AI robot thing.
Yes, there is a robot. I forget what his name is. He's basically like Dave.
Yeah. But part of me is like, was that an actual subplot, or was that just part of the
real.
Game Grumps?
No, it was real. He falls in love with her.
Yes, okay.
He falls in love with her, and he like, not like forces her to dance, but like is like, dance with me, Peach. And she's like, okay. And so like there's a whole dancing mini game, but you do get to play as Peach in it, and it's very fun in that way. You kind of like at the end of every chapter jump over to the place where Peach has been kidnapped to and plays her for a short bit. Tech, it's like Tech 3000 or Tech 9000. That's his name. It's TEC.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
and
also...
then I was like, in the end, spoiler alert, he sacrifices himself.
Oh.
Yeah, like literally at the very end, he like gains sentience and humanity, and it's like, I will do this to save Peach. I will shut myself down to save Peach. And like it's very weird and dramatic, creepy, but
that's what I vaguely remember. But again, it was just like, oh, was that something the Game Grumps were adding to with their own funny stuff? But no, I guess that was real.
Nice. All right, let's get into our next track. This is Justin's pick. What do you got for us?
All right, we're going to listen to Battle Macho Grubba.
Sounds good.
We're going to start with the GameCube version, and then we'll come back and do the other. All right, that was the GameCube version, and now to hear the Switch version of Battle Macho Grubba. All right, welcome back. That was both versions of Battle Macho Grubba from the GameCube and the Switch versions of Paper Mario 1000 Year Door, and wow, what a difference on those. I'll let you guys go first because I wrote down a number of things that I thought were interesting.
I don't have anything to write. Like, I don't have a means to write down, so I write it down in my noodle. But basically, I definitely prefer the Switch one, and it's one of those things that I'm like, I wish I could have unequipped the, like, music badge that changes the music mid-fight.
I was going to say,
because I now want to replay the game purely to actually like hear the new battle, the boss music specifically, because like I said, Rogue Port, I'm like, I like the like cutesy little calming, like you know, you listen to that song so much in this game, but you know the battles you only, especially the boss fights, you only get for small bursts. So like I would have loved to have heard that while actually playing the game.
Yeah.
I love the rock elements and everything. That's like, it's so much more intense.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
The GameCube version sounds like a marching band at times. I really like the drums and the way that the tone on the drums fits. It really does sound like marching band snare. But there's parts with certain synths where I feel like I'm getting my teeth drilled. Like they have those like kind of like, you know, synths. The Switch version though is obviously much more rocking, but a lot of the synths kind of get lost in the guitars, while others just sound awkward next to them. So like particularly more towards the later half of the track, there's this synth that kind of comes in that's really overpoweringly loud as compared with the guitars, and it just doesn't fit with the other synth that's also in there previously. So it like there's this like weird imbalance of like synth leads. So
I wonder if that part of the song is the part where almost all the bosses, when you get them to like lower HPs, they start having slightly different animations where they're tired.
Yeah, maybe.
And their battles tactics change up. And Grubba specifically, he is the big boss of Glitzville and the Glitz Pit, which essentially is a wrestling pit. It's like an MMA thing.
Yeah.
And Grubba is the guy who organizes and manages the Glitz Pit.
Does he have is he like a bird?
So I was actually just looking it up. He is apparently what is known as a Clubba, which is a variant of the spike enemy that is only found in Paper Mario. So Clubbas are they're like it's like the little green guy with the big lips and the little white mohawk thing. That's the throw the spike balls. That's what apparently a spike is. I think he shows up in the Mario Party
Mario
games.
3.
Yeah, and then he shows up in some of the Mario Party games. So they made a modified version of that where they just hold a spike ball on a stick, and that's in the first game. And then so they modified that again to make Macho Gub whatever his name is.
Macho Grubba,
Macho Grubba, who is a Clubba. But so basically he was a former fighter of the Glitz Pit who eventually took over it, and like, you know, he retired, and he's the boss, and he's just a real sleaze. He's that very promoter, like, hey kid, what's going, or whatever. So like, I feel like a lot of those like weird irregularities are probably trying to highlight the variance in his personality and like the like eeriness of him, and also the nature of why you're even fighting him, because he's actually one of the few bosses who's unrelated to the X-Nauts and the Shadow big boss thing demon, and like he's just a jerk.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's just his own jerk.
Yeah.
On the GameCube version, it was an interesting listen. I wasn't familiar with this track. I noted how like the flute in the GameCube version was fairly breathy.
Yeah.
Despite probably being able to use Red Book audio, I'm guessing they went with a lot of synthesized music maybe to save space, because like the GameCube discs are kind of small.
Sure.
I'm finding myself surprised at how, I guess how little I feel I'm hearing Red Book audio from. Well, it's still Red Book audio. It's just it's not chiptunes.
They may be using certain instrumentation that's more MIDI sounding.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But like the flute, despite being breathy, it sounded like a synth that was being used just because of the way that the tone was changing. And then I didn't know what else to call it, but I called it a soft klaxon. Like there's almost like an alarm noise that happens in the GameCube version, which I was surprised wasn't replicated really in the Switch version.
No, yeah.
But what I did notice in the Switch version that was new was this weird like groaning / vocal fry noise. And I like that was kind of weird. Like it didn't make me dislike the track, but it was one of those things that was like,
Oh, see, I like that, because like, if you don't know what Grubba looks like, he's a big frog looking man with a mohawk and a spike thing, some sort of variant Koopa.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like I feel like that's very much supposed to be reminiscent of the fact that like, he will just like gulp you up if you give him the chance, and
When I think of Clubba, I think of Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest. There's a character named Clubba that you have to visit him to get. You give him 15 like Creme coins or DK coins or whatever, and then you can access parts of the Lost World level, the secret levels.
Yeah.
And you can eat one per world. You can find him and pay him, and then you can get access to these new worlds. And his name is Clubba. So every time you said Clubba, I was like,
yeah. So you have
him?
Grubba the Clubba, but not that Clubba.
Right, exactly. I overall prefer the GameCube version of this track, mostly just because I think the synths really kind of stand out much more in that. And while I like the rock elements of the Switch version, I feel like there's not much else to it other than that. And a lot of those other leads get buried. So, yeah, I prefer the dentist drilling.
Yeah, I think one of the things that made me the happiest in the Switch version was just hearing that bass.
Yeah.
The sound of the electric bass that goes throughout it is just a lot cleaner, and I don't know, it fits in that audio sound that I really enjoy.
Yeah, and like I said, I just prefer the Switch one because of the context of knowing when and where you fight Grubba, and like it's literally there's like a huge crowd of people cheering.
It makes sense.
Yeah, it's a fight pit, essentially. Yeah. So it's one of those. It just sounds like much more appropriate to the setting.
Right. Yeah, cool.
Almost like a reference to our last episode. It's very much a wrestling themed thing.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna move on to my first pick, which is Petal Meadows. We're gonna listen to the GameCube version, and then we'll listen to the Switch version. All right, that was Petal Meadows, the GameCube version. Now it's time for the Switch version. Thanks for joining us back on our same song, different system episode for Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, where we're joined by Justin's wife, Ariel. We are wrapping up the halfway point with Petal Meadows. That's the track we just heard, the GameCube version first, and then the Switch version last. I want to get your guys' thoughts on this track.
For me, this one, I feel so far there's definitely differences between the two, but I feel these two are the closest in similarities that we've heard so far.
Interesting.
I like almost anything by Koji Kondo, so the fact that this is heavily classic Super Mario, Koji Kondo inspired.
Yeah, like that Mario through line through the entire thing.
Exactly. Like that just, it makes me smile throughout both tracks. I mean, it's very, very easily recognizable. The GameCube version, I feel, was fairly electronic in nature. There was a lot of electronic notes in the Switch version, but it felt like they were going for more of an authentic instrument feel with the Switch. But there were even in the GameCube version a few bits that sounded reminiscent of like the Game Boy, just like the tones that they were using. And then, of course, you've got those electric toms. They just make me laugh.
Yeah.
I once again feel like my through line is going to be I like the GameCube version for the like general regional music, and then I like the Switch version for like the boss music or the character music. I definitely like the GameCube version more though, but I also, again, even though I didn't really hear them growing up, whatever, I'm very fond of the like pops you heard in the background, or like the little spring twangies.
Mouth weasel.
Yeah, things like that. Yeah. For running around and just like the casual everyday thing, it's like too much.
Yeah. The GameCube version is really bright with cheery synths, and I love that pseudo 8-bit sound that kind of comes in that Justin mentioned. The Switch version synths have a lot of busyness going on in the background with synths that kind of don't really add much to the overall sound. And it's like missing those 8-bit references, which I thought really gave the track a lot of character.
Especially with how you have that through line of the classic Mario track.
Yeah, like the beginning of the track has that Mario da-da-da-da-da-da, and then when they bring in that 8-bit style a little bit later, it just kind of really makes your ears perk up. I will say the Switch version had really great instrumentation with those violins and the horns, and there was I think it was like a saxophone.
Yeah.
Like a really kind of quiet saxophone. It wasn't like a lead sax or anything. So that all sounded great, but I agree with Ariel. I think the GameCube version is better.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, the Switch versions that I don't like, it's not that they're bad. They're beautiful pieces of music. Yeah. They're just not what I want.
Right.
I mean, it's a preference thing.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like I said, it's weird though, because it's like, I want the Switch ones, the big music and the big instruments for when it like feels really impactful, and then I just want them to tone it back for when I'm just like, I'm running around a field and just jumping on some Goombas.
Right.
That's fair. That makes sense.
So what are some of the characters that you kind of team up with? I know Goombella.
Yeah.
That one was one of the first characters that you run into in Rogueport.
Yep.
And she was pretty memorable. I mean, basically a female, like late teenage kind of vibe.
She's like late teenage, early college days, like archaeology student, essentially. Yeah. And so she's working with the Professor Goomba, who's got these crazy eyes and like Doc Brown, like crazy white tufts of hair.
Marty.
Yeah. Basically, that's basically what I imagine his voice is, because they don't have real voices.
Yeah.
So there's Goombella. My favorite is the small Yoshi character you get in Glitzville, who you hatch. And you get to name him.
He has like a little tuft of red hair, right?
Well, so here's the thing. His color depends on how long you wait to hatch the egg.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You do a certain number of fights and he hatches at a particular story point. But you can change what color he comes out, which changes his base color and his hair color and his shoe color, depending on how long you actually wait to do that fight. It's like a 20-minute time span for every color, like over the course of whatever. So if you just wait 20 minutes, it cycles back to the first option.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's really cool.
So I went for the orange one on my Switch playthrough, because I didn't know that. I think I got the black one back in the day, and I named him Batman. Because he's like black with like red hair and red shoes. So it's just like, he's Batman. There's him. There's in Petal Meadow, you get the Koopa, who's Koops the Koopa.
Oops.
Unlike the first Paper Mario, he's not a Para-Koopa. He's a normal, just ground Koopa. And he's like a shy nerd,
he's
essentially.
He's kind of like afraid.
Yeah, he's afraid of everything. And so he's like, I have to go prove myself. I'm going to go with Mario. And you're like, okay, kid.
Yeah.
There's a former theater actress named...
the Wind Spirit.
Yep, named Flurry.
Madame Flurry.
Yeah. She's ridiculous. One of my favorites is the Bomb. Oh, God.
Admiral Bobbery.
Admiral Bobbery.
Yes, Bobbery. His backstory is so intense for this game, which like I don't want to say, because like if someone actually, plays the game and has never played it before, I don't want to give away everything. But like his backstory will literally make you weep. Vivian is the ghost. And I love Vivian, and I'm very upset because she doesn't have an original theme in the GameCube version, and I wanted to pick her theme for the Switch one because the other bit of important information that I love is they finally canonized that Vivian is trans.
Yes. Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Because
in
I
the original
remember
Japanese version.
That's right. The English and German version, they removed all references to her being trans.
Yeah, the English.
The localizations.
Yeah,
The localizations. Yeah, they removed all references to her being trans because, it was early 2000s, so they were like, oh no, we can't have that political agenda. And I'm like, people are people, let people be people.
Yeah.
We stand a trans queen. But yeah, so in this game, they actually very specifically maintained the dialogue of her being like, yeah, so I wasn't always a ghost sister.
Yeah.
And Mario's like, okay.
Cool.
And she's like, and you're okay with that? And he's like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
He's just like, okay.
Yeah.
It's
cool.
It's very sweet. But
That's
I
really cool.
love Vivian. She has very good powers.
She's sisters with like two other ghosts that come up later in the game that are kind of like villains.
Bedlam is the eldest sister, and she is just
Awful.
very mean, very cruel. I will say, thankfully, they don't really go into the like anti-trans jokes. They just pick on her because they're just mean.
Yeah, they're just mean.
They just call her stupid, basically.
Yeah.
And then there's a middle sister who basically doesn't speak. I don't remember what her name is, but she's big and heavyset, and she just kind of goes, oh, like the muscle of
There's
the
a
group.
little bit
Marilyn.
of a Cinderella vibe kind of going on.
I was
Yes.
literally going to say it's a Cinderella story.
Yeah.
But yeah,
You're a Cinderella story.
Nice.
Marilyn,
Marilyn
okay.
is the other one.
She's the muscle, Bedlam is the brains, and Vivian is like the sweet one, essentially.
That's cool.
Yeah, and
I'm
then-
glad that I was wondering about that, if they were going to, when they did the Switch version, if they were going to make it right.
They did right.
That's
Thank heavens.
Yeah,
Let's be
yeah,
real.
Technically, they're not ghosts; they're like shadow creatures. Or
Yeah.
shadows.
Oh, right.
I mean, they look like ghosts.
Yeah.
And then there's another character that is also ghost-like / shadow-like named Dupless, who's neither.
Yeah.
He's neither the ghost sisters, and then he's not a boo. There's that, and then
There's one more optional character.
yes, as I Miss Meows. I love her. So
Yeah.
you encounter her a bunch of times. She works
She's like a mouse, right?
Yeah, she's one of the mice. There's two mice that run the bad shop. So you see her with her Miss Meows mask on, and she's very cheeky, and she like gives Mario smooches, and it's like, let's see you later, sweet cheese, and like runs off. And so you only get her optionally if you do the quest. Essentially, she's like, I'm looking for a badge, and I can't find it. Can you find it, big strong man? And you're like, okay. And then when you find it, she's like, just kidding, that was a test. I'll join you. And you're like, all right, cool. I really like her ability, though. I think is very underrated in combat because one of her very low cost abilities just bypasses armor and like any
That's
defenses.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, it's a pretty fun cast of characters, I will say. I really enjoyed all of them. I'd probably say I liked Goombella and Koops the best of all of them. I liked Vivian too, but yeah, probably Goombella and Koops. All right, let's get into our next track. We're going to go round robin back to Ariel. What do you got for us?
So my next pick is Super Luigi.
Nice.
So that was the GameCube version of Super Luigi, and now we're going to listen to the Switch version. So that was the Switch version of Super Luigi.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That was fun.
So I have way more feels about the Switch version of the song than I thought I would have because, again, I had not listened to the new version. And so the context of where you hear this is Luigi is in the game. Like, sometimes he appears in the audience, but primarily you run into him in Rogueport, and he's like, "Oh, Mario, I'm also off on a grand adventure." And you're like, "Sure you are, Luigi. What's going on?" He's like, "Oh, I stumbled upon a treasure map, and I have to save Princessy Claire from the evil Waffle King." And you're like, "What?" And so every time you run into him at like every chapter, he has a new part of his story, which eventually gets sold in one of the shops as like a little book item where they've collected the tales of Luigi's grand adventure. But it's all like bakery food themed. He sounds crazy the first one or two times you talk to him until like the third or fourth time he shows up with contextual characters to the story. Like there's a Bomb who's actually a walking cherry, and I think the bloopers, the little squid is like toasted like a marshmallow or like a cookie or something. And so basically his story starts legitimizing itself as you go on, and you're like, oh no, this is actually happening. I think or Luigi's just paid some people and like dolled them up and like I don't know. It's very strange. His story is really fun. It's like it's so zany and weird. And that's what I like about the GameCube version is like it's bubbly and weird, and it, like I know it has a lot of the synth stuff, so like it's just very bizarre. And although the Switch version again is very lovely, and I love the live instrumentation of it, I feel like the music almost legitimizes his stories too much. Like there's a part at like the midpoint and at the very end where they bring in that synth like boppy quirkiness that I like, and I wish they had kind of kept more of that throughout the remake, just because again, the whole context of whenever you talk to him is like, you don't know how much he's making up and how much is actually real. And I feel like the Switch version kind of just is like, no, it's real. And here's this grandiose adventure music, which I do appreciate, obviously, in both versions. There's that successful Mario through line, the like, da-da-da-da-da, you know, that kind of thing. Wrong series, I think I did.
Right, no, I kind of get what you're saying. It's like the castle music.
The flagpole.
Yes, when you slide down the flagpole.
Yeah. And like that, I think that's the only part in this game where you hear that line. It's only in Luigi's theme, to my knowledge. I'm not 100% sure.
It's the da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
That is actually the Mario 3 wand music, if I recall.
Oh.
When you give the wand back to...
When you give
the wand back to whoever the ruler is.
After you do the airship, you're right. I do remember that now.
Yeah.
It's a fuller instrumentation than what it is. Yeah, okay, I get you.
But I think this song is the only time you hear like that melody, to my knowledge, in the game. And so
that's
like
a deep cut Mario.
And like it's fun because it's kind of like, oh yes, like here's the note that like maybe Luigi is telling the truth and it is real and he is having success. But then, you know, he tells a story of he's like, the evil Waffle King tried to marry Princess Eclair, so I had to impersonate her by dressing as in a wedding dress and high heels. And then his like random partner there's like, yeah, you should see Luigi fight in heels. It's great. And you're like, what?
That's interesting because that could be a reference to the Mario Brothers comic that came out in Nintendo Power, where Princess Peach gets kidnapped and then she frees herself. Then I think Mario gets kidnapped, so they end up sending the princess back, but it's not the princess, it's Luigi in a dress.
Oh, weird. Yeah, no, I just know
that's interesting.
I just know that at one point he tells you how he had to like fight the Waffle King on top of a volcano in a wedding dress and high heels.
Yeah.
And you're like,
that's funny.
Like literally like, what is happening? And it's just his stories are so bonkers.
The GameCube version has some, I wrote down squishy synths.
Yeah,
you know?
it's very it's like oompa, like oompa,
Bum, bum, bum. Like polka.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of percussion in the GameCube version. I love the Mario 3 wand music reference in both, but I think I preferred the GameCube version overall. Again, the Switch, they kept some of those synths, but again, they're just too vibrant and there's just too much going on. I think the minimalist vibe of this track on the GameCube really kind of serves the purpose of the story and the characters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, knowing the context, I can kind of backpedal to that, but what I originally wrote down is, this feels very simple, and then why they gotta do Luigi like that?
Like, he's a goof.
No,
he's
I
just
know.
a little goofy man.
But so knowing the context now, it makes more sense, but like just hearing the GameCube version, I was just like, man, like, why you gotta do him like that? Like, this song feels like an insult to him.
Yeah.
And then there's a part of it where it gets a little, I don't want to say dark, but there's a part of it that feels almost like a slightly brighter ghost hunting tune, which, considering Luigi's Mansion came out in 2001, this came out in 2004, they could have actually been directly referencing that, but I wasn't sure. I put down that last bit sounds like the victory theme, which is what you were talking about.
Yeah.
But for the Switch version, we go from like this electronic synth to a pan flute, and to me, again, the context is king here, but this felt like a better version of what I would like to hear for Luigi, because I'm not like a Luigi super fan, but I do feel like Luigi gets...
He gets the short end of the stick a lot.
A lot of times in the newer Super Mario games, if you can choose who to play as, I usually play as Luigi just because I feel like he doesn't get enough screen time. The theme that I picked up in the Switch version that I didn't pick up in the GameCube version, after that, like that victory theme, if you listen, it's not the same melody, but the chord progression matches, again, that classic Super Mario da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's just, I didn't hear it in the GameCube version. Then in the Switch, I was like, I kind of heard it on the first loop, and then I was listening for it in the second loop, and I was like, yeah, no, that is the same chord progression.
Oh, you see, like, that's a really fun addition. And I don't have a very good ear, so I don't hear a lot of that stuff. I listen to everything in the context of when you hear it in the game, so that's kind of what my perspective is for the most part. But yeah, no, they definitely play up how much of a ham Luigi is, and he very much in this game is kind of like pining after the heroism that Mario has. Like everyone looks to Mario for help, and Luigi just wants to be that guy.
Right.
Again, you think that he makes it up, and over time it seems actually kind of legitimate, but it's like we never see the Waffle King and we never see Princess Eclair in any Mario media ever again. And it's one of those things that like I would love for them to make Paper Luigi and give us those games. I would like, obviously you're not going to get the whole story because there's a lot that he has to leave out, because literally when you're talking to him, again, Mario dozes off. Like he talks so much. And it's like full dialogue bubbles in, and it just keeps going to the point that Mario and his companion, whoever's out, will doze off, and eventually once he stops, he's like, yeah, I was totally listening. Great adventure. And then they get published into books in the game.
Somebody from Nintendo is listening right now, and they're just like writing this down. Like,
please, Nintendo, give us Paper Luigi. I will pay you $60 real right now to play Paper Luigi, where he rescues Princess Eclair.
That's it.
That would be,
an
interesting thing to do. Yeah.
So let's talk about the composers. So the GameCube version we're going to tackle first. The two composers were Yoshito Harano and Yuka Tsujiyoko. So Yoshito Harano started off doing Fire Emblem sound support in 2003 on the Game Boy Advance and worked with a lot of the Fire Emblem games over the years. Kind of took a break and did Advance Wars 2 the same year. But then after Paper Mario, worked on Fire Emblem The Sacred Stones, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, went back to Advance Wars for Dual Strike, worked on the Dance Dance Revolution Mario Mix game, doing Miss Meow's song, doing original composition, which they were uncredited for, unfortunately. And then kind of finished up with Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn and Advance Wars Days of Ruin. They really haven't done much else since then, so went on to do other things, but that's it.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yuka Tsujiyoko, on the other hand, still active as of 2023, but I think they are the Fire Emblem composer.
That checks out, yeah.
They started out with Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light in 1990 on the NES.
Right.
And then Fire Emblem Gaiden 92 on the NES, so they started way back, and they're still going, which is amazing.
Very much the Fire Emblem composer, most likely.
Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure every Fire Emblem game is here with Yuka as the music composer.
Either that or sound supervisor, right?
Right. You've got Tetris Attack, both the SNES and Game Boy versions in 96.
I love Tetris Attack soundtrack.
That's why I wanted to call that out, because I was like, oh, that's
so
that's
good.
A good one.
It's super chill.
They also did Paper Mario in 2000. They also worked on that same Ms. Meow's song in the Dance Dance Revolution Mario Mix.
Oh, okay.
They did music arrangement for Super Smash Bros. Brawl, Pokemon Picross in 2015 on the 3DS, and then more recently Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, who didn't compose on that.
Yeah.
They did music arrangement. And then in 2019, Fire Emblem Three Houses, and 2023, Fire Emblem Engage. So, like I said, big Fire Emblem composer, and did a lot of the earlier Paper Mario stuff too.
Yeah, I think more they're just now on for sound support when it comes to supervising over the role of the composer for Fire Emblem.
Yeah, I mean they've been in it for 30 years, so that it's
pretty much
usually
like
they move on to that kind of stuff.
Like Fire Emblem's Koji Kondo, basically.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. All right.
All
Let's
right.
get into your next pick.
Yeah, my next and last pick. This is going to be Mario Brothers House.
Sweet.
All right, that was the GameCube version of Mario Brothers House, and now we will hear the Switch version. All right, thank you for coming back from Mario Brothers House. We heard the GameCube and then the Switch version, as we've been doing all night here on XVGM Radio. So this one made me laugh a bit because I do like the GameCube version. Something about taking a kind of well-known track or a couple of well-known tracks and then just making them really chill and really laid back. And I was thinking like this almost like a lounge version of the Super Mario Brothers theme, and then like that overworld theme from I think Super Mario 3 in there.
Yeah, and particularly the way that the track, the da 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 da,
Yep.
it sounds very much like the intro music to Mario RPG.
Oh, yeah.
The sound and tone and style of it very much harkens back to that very beginning opening when like Princess Toadstool is like picking flowers and like, hanging out.
Well,
I mean, and the only time you hear this music is basically at the very start of the game, and then after you beat the main storyline boss, Mario goes back home, so you hear it again. Basically, he gets a letter summoning him to Rogueport, and then you get a letter later from Goombella basically being like, everybody's doing great. This is what everyone's been up to. And like, so those are the only times you really hear the music. But so I don't know the context of like that kind of stuff, but I will say I actually was surprised that I liked the Switch version much more than the GameCube one.
I agree.
I think the violins are much softer and everything just feels like they maintain that chill vibe of just like this cozy little cabin in the woods, because that's basically the only context you're given is it's this quaint little house. Some of the synths, I think, of the GameCube version become like almost grating on the ears after a while. Like it's still very boppy and chill overall, but like they turned them into more like violins and flutes, and it serves it well.
Yeah, I think that this track is the reverse of every other track that we've heard so far.
Yes.
In the sense that Yeah, the GameCube version had slow but fun kind of retro vibes. You had that Mario RPG intro music for the references. I love the violin, even though it's obvious that it's not like a real violin. But I gotta say the Switch version with its real violins and the synths sounding like a little bit punchier and not like... My biggest worry about a lot of these tracks is when you upgrade them to the Switch, because the instrumentation is so much like more richer and full and everything, it kind of loses the specialty that is being brought through the inferior sound on the GameCube. It like dissipates it a little bit. But on the Switch version, for this track in particular, I preferred that version just because those violins and the strings and everything, just they kind of embraced the track and made it, even though it sounded more full, it also didn't detach away from those fun retro vibes that the GameCube version had. Those didn't disappear. Those were still there.
Yeah, it feels like it enhanced what it's supposed to be instead of just making it the big band version.
Right. And that's the thing, like the GameCube version, I got that feeling of like, oh, this is kind of like a lounge version. And then with the Switch version, you've got like the snaps and that violin, like you were saying, like this is now the jazz lounge version. And where is Richard Cheese with the lyrics?
Yes, exactly.
So it's just that one was a lot of fun.
Yeah. They definitely capture the cozy, quaint, like countryside life.
Agreed. So the Switch version's composers, Kazuki Komai and Fumihiro Isobe. The first one, Kazuki Komai, really does not have a ton of credits for audio. They started off in Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia in 2017 doing sound support, and then moved on to WarioWare Gold the following year. After that, they did Paper Mario The Origami King, Fire Emblem Engage, and this game, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. So on the Switch. So they were also labeled as the recording director for this one too. So maybe less composition, more directing the other composer, possibly.
Maybe, Fumihiro Isobe is kind of similar. They started off in 2016 with Paper Mario Color Splash and then moved on to WarioWare Gold, Paper Mario Origami King as the mastering engineer, and then also Fire Emblem Engage in 2023 before coming to Thousand Year Door for composition.
Yeah, there's so many new composers out now for Nintendo that like you just can't keep track of all of them. I've never heard of these composers before.
No, they are new.
So, yeah, it's cool to see some new blood kind of coming into, Nintendo of Japan. And,
Well, I mean, also you think about the scale of Nintendo and where they started from. They basically had to use the same people for every project because that's all they had.
Yeah.
And now that there's multi-billion-dollar company, a huge media conglomerate megacorp, so they can hire basically whoever they want.
I guess we could toss a couple yen to, some newcomers. Yeah.
But listen, from what I understand of Japanese business culture, it's needed. Again, I know very little. But there's that whole thing of like when you get a position, you stay in that position for as long as you can. And there's a seniority and a respect thing in that way. But that also means that you do run the risk of stuff going stale.
Yeah, true. All right, we're going to get into the final track, which is my pick. And I'm picking a track called Final Battle.
How appropriate.
Also known as Shadow Queen. And again, we'll listen to the GameCube and then the Switch version. All right, that was the GameCube version that we just heard. Now we're going to hear Final Battle Shadow Queen Switch version. thanks for joining us back on our same song, different system, Paper Mario, The 1,000-Year Door. That track was Final Battle, Shadow Queen. I'm curious on what you guys' final thoughts are on this track.
I definitely love the Switch version way more than the GameCube one, because again, big boss, the music finally has that weight and drama and like gravitas that it needs, especially for when you actually do face her. She's huge and she's got these like really cool animations because she's ghosty, shadowy creature. So they do that thing where it's like you take a strip of paper and you kind of like crunch it and like fold it in stuff. So it's like accordion-ish a little bit. So there's that kind of element to some of her attacks and stuff. And this is, I will say, probably one of the songs that you will organically probably hear the entire thing during the course of the fight, because it's a multi-phase fight. She hits you really hard, so you got to spend a lot of time healing and swapping out your partners. There's dialogue in the middle of the fight where she taunts you and whatever. So, like, it's a long track, but you will actually hear the entirety of it unless you're, like, speedrunning it or something.
Yeah. To give context, too, essentially Mario is able to open the 1,000-Year Door, but what comes out is the Shadow Queen. And Grodus, who is the leader of the X-Nauts, ends up using Peach as kind of like a
human sacrifice,
yeah, like a sacrifice into the Shadow Queen, so Peach becomes the Shadow Queen.
Yeah, the Shadow Queen possesses Peach, and that's the whole reason she's specifically been kept alive that whole time and well taken care of, is because they were like, well, we need a good host.
Yeah.
So that's the demon mentioned earlier in the plot, where they mentioned that a demon is been sealed away, bright evil. Yeah, she's a really cool enemy to fight, and like I said, it's a very difficult fight, genuinely. The parts that I love in the Switch version, especially, is that vibe of like, oh, the choir has started. That we're fighting the great evil big boss guy. You know, like when you hear the Latin singing, you know you're doomed.
If only they were singing in Latin, not just vocalizing.
Yeah, I was gonna say that those are the parts that really stood out to me. Was the much more masculine, like oh, whatever, and then there are elements of like a higher, more feminine pitched choir vocalizations throughout it, and I really like those in the. And then the much heavier like rock elements, right. Especially at the start of the song.
Yeah,
definitely leaned into metal. I mean, just between the heavy guitars and then you got like the double bass pedal going on. The other fighting track felt kind of like light metal. This felt like heavy metal.
Yeah, for sure.
Just like all the way. I did like a number of things about the GameCube track. Like I liked the beginning of the track had this like heavier chiptune feel.
Yeah. I
mean, it's like, taking the GameCube and doing like a nostalgia thing during the GameCube music. Like, hey, remember chiptunes from a bunch of years ago? So, and I'm just a sucker for good chiptunes. So like that kind of caught me. I also thought there was some pretty good instrumentation on it. There was like the piano that they used was very clear and just like a lot of low piano droning, and the violin kind of stood out. And then on top of that, I thought it was kind of a weird decision, but it worked in the context of the song. There was a lot of sound effects built into the GameCube version, just like things I'm like, that's not an instrument, that's just like sound effects from the game. The Switch version, obviously, like you completely lose the chiptune for the obvious reasons of it's a little difficult to have chiptunes stand out when you've got these heavy metal rock and guitars. But the vocals confused me, because at first I heard the vocals and I was like, oh, wow, synth vocals, that's an interesting choice. And then like the second round of vocals you get, I suddenly wasn't sure if it was synth or if they actually had recorded people. The reason that I thought they were synth to begin with is because like there's virtually like no attack on them. They're just like, they're there. Like it's immediate. And like, yes, you can do that with your voice, but like that gave me a feeling of like somebody was hitting a keyboard and these were synthesized.
Like there was no build up.
Right. But then, like I said, like the second round of vocals that you get where like there's the male and female vocals going, I suddenly wasn't sure if they were synthesized or not.
Yeah. I'm a good sucker for some metal in a final boss battle, but I will say I did really like the electronic elements in the GameCube version, but I thought that it was good that those got a little lost in the Switch version this time around. I feel like the Switch version is it's like an entirely different track in so many ways. But I guess the best comparison that I could make for this is it's like hearing One Wing Angel in Final Fantasy VII and then watching Advent Children.
Oh my God.
Because so Uematsu did all of the music like metal style, so you've got those really chuggy guitars and everything in this version, in the Switch version here. I like that. Like I said, I'm a sucker for it. My biggest concern is always, does this take away from what the original was trying to portray? And in all honesty, I think that this enhanced, very much so enhanced the original version to the point where it's like, it's the superior version.
Yeah, kind of like with the Super Mario House song, where it's like, it's not just, we made it big brass version. It's like, we made it what it should have been the first time around, and we just didn't have the technology at the time.
Yeah. We have the technology, but don't want to spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
Cool. It was great to have you on, Ariel.
I love this game. It's a fantastic game.
To talk about this game, because you obviously know it from front to back.
I went very hard in hyperfixation mode when it came out, and I played it far too long every day and did far too much. And I will say, if you haven't played it, go play it. If you can get your hands on a copy, or whether you buy it or borrow it, who cares?
Yeah.
But the other thing is, if nothing else, I do want to replay it to hear all the new Switch versions, because like I said, walking around Rogueport, I didn't get the same feeling that I wanted out of it. So that's why I immediately put the GameCube music badge on. But then, like I said, I know that there's unique tracks for Vivian and Bonetail and several other characters that they just didn't have in the GameCube one. And I don't actually remember if with the badge on, if they just give you for Bonetail, for example, if they just give you the generic dragon theme, or if they give you Bonetail's new theme. I assume they give you the old generic one, because that's
Probably.
the point.
Yeah.
But the dragon theme itself, it's good, but I listened to Bonetail's theme when trying to figure out what tracks to pick, and I was like, dang, this slaps hard. It's just so good.
So now's the time of the episode where we pick our favorite tracks of each version, I guess you could say, right?
Oh, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. So I guess we'll let the guest go first.
Of these tracks, my favorite Switch one is probably the Shadow Queen, because it just hits so good. It's just, you can't beat it. And then for the GameCube one, I'll probably just go Rogueport, because like I said, that song is drilled into my brain, and it's so memorable, and you spend so much time in Rogueport, and you hear it so much that even if you don't like it when you first start playing the game, eventually you just find yourself bopping to it.
That's fair.
I'm pretty much on point with you. I think the GameCube Rogueport is also kind of drilled into my brain, just because I remember spending so much time in Rogueport in the beginning of the game.
And even when you're not doing anything, you're like, I just gotta take a break, and I gotta go grab a sandwich or something. You're probably in Rogueport, and so it's just on in the background even when you're not playing the game.
Right. And I'd go with the Switch version of the Final Battle Shadow Queen. Yeah.
For the Switch version, I think my favorite track was really the Mario Brothers house. Just something about that jazz lounge really hit me right. I was going to pick Petal Meadows for my favorite GameCube one, but just because I don't have as much experience with the game, I think I will fall back on the Rogueport one. Is really good. I don't really remember if I like Petal Meadows or Rogueport more, but Rogueport is the one that I know I've heard more, only because watching Game Grumps play it and in general where you spend the most time, so it's the most commonly heard track.
I will say the Super Luigi theme is a very close second for me, because I am a sucker for a goofy romp of a song. I love something that's got a little oompa, and it just doesn't take itself seriously at all, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah.
Well, again, thanks so much for coming on the show. Do you have anything you'd like to promote? You have Twitch, right?
Yeah, I haven't streamed in a long time. My Twitch is Space Pigeon Ari, just all one word. Space is an outer space, pigeon is Pigeon, and then Ari is Ari. So there's that. I actually have a really good friend from college who's doing very well on Twitch. His name's Memat, so it's Mematt. So go check him out. He streams Monday to Friday. I think it's 11 to 4 or almost 11 to 5. So if you need something on in the background when you're at work, or just love some good vibes and hanging out, go check him out.
Nice.
Yeah. So, we'd like to take a moment to thank our Patreon patrons, without whom this show's continued improvement would be impossible. They are Cam Worma, Jordan and Ensign Davis, Rage Cage, Kung Fu Carlito of the Heroes 3 podcast, Scott McElhone, Claire Myers, Brad Austin, Chris Murray, Llama Adam, Marcus Stewart, Red Hua, Nick Davis, and Ryan McPherson.
If you would like to become a patron, you can sign up at patreon.com/XVGM Radio. There you can see the different tiers as well. Just $1 gets you a thank you and access to our monthly live shows.
You can visit our website, xvgmradio.com, where you can listen to all the episodes and learn more about your hosts, as well as any of our guests or composers that we've had on the show.
If you'd like to reach out to us, you can always email us at xvgmradio@gmail.com.
If you like what you've heard, please consider giving us a review on iTunes.
You can join our Facebook group and chat with other VGM lovers at www.facebook.com/groups/XVGM Radio, where we talk about everything from current game news to sharing awesome VGM tracks or just talking about the podcast itself.
You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle on both those sites is at XVGM Radio.
If you don't have any other social media or just want to try something unique, check us out on our Discord group chat. Links in the show notes.
All right, so in just a few weeks, we've got a bunch of new stuff coming out. Probably what's the soonest? The After Dark is the 15th of October, and that's going to be Castlevania Resurrection of the Night. I believe it's also called Alucard's Elegy. Yeah, so we're going to be listening to that vinyl, and you can check that out on Justin's Twitch, which is twitch.tv/shock83j16.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then on the 25th of October, we'll be doing our yearly Spooky Fest Backstage Pass.
I'm sorry, the what?
I said Spooky Fest Backstage Pass.
So Pumpkin Hill, right? More Pumpkin Hill.
We did that
More
already.
Pumpkin Hill.
So yeah, we're going to be picking tracks from various different Halloween-inspired games or songs.
Yeah, songs that are spooky.
Yes.
In general.
Songs that are spooky. And then, of course, every year we do a episode, which will be 116. Episode 116, which will be Spooky Fest 2024, our pseudo outdoor event where
in Mike's backyard.
In my backyard, which we absolutely don't record indoors.
Nope. The patrons are there and walking around and requesting stuff. It's
being
all
zombies. It's all
legit.
Can confirm.
Yes. So it's a great time. So join us in just a couple weeks for that. And that's all I got.
Yeah. No, I think that's it.
That covers it. So this is Mike
and Justin
signing off for XVGM Radio. Nice. All right, let's get into our next track.
All right.
That's
mine.
Boom.
Wow. So that was Super Luigi for the GameCube, and next we're going to listen to the Switch version. Listen.
You really still record? This is going to be an outtake.
Listen. Luigi is a virgin when you hear his story, let me tell you.
Super version. Yeah. All right, you want to do it again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.